أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم بارك لنا في جمعنا هذا، اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مباركا مرحوما، واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما، ولا تجعل فينا ولا منا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم ارزقنا الفهم عنك والبصيرة في أمرك والنفاذ في طاعتك. اللهم أصلح لنا شأننا كله وأصلح عاقبتنا في الأمور كلها. دبر لنا فإننا لا نحسن التدبير، وقدر لنا فإننا لا نحسن التقدير. اللهم أصلح أحوالنا وأحوال ذوينا وأحبابنا وأحوال أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. فك الكرب عن كل مكروب من أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أنت به عليم. اللهم يا غياث المستغيثين ويا مجيب السائلين، فك الكرب عنا وعن إخواننا المستضعفين في فلسطين وفي سوريا وفي العراق وفي بورما وفي كشمير وفي تركيا وفي اليمن وفي مصر وفي سائر بلاد المسلمين. أنت أعلم بهم منا يا رب العالمين. Oh Allah, we call upon you, we pray to you, we beseech you, we ask you by your names and attributes to fill our hearts with guidance, and to fill our hearts with your abundant mercy, and to fill our homes with your abundant mercy. Oh Allah, we ask you to make us steadfast upon the right path, and to guide us and to guide our families and our children, and to make us of those who love you and love the Prophet ﷺ and love our deen and understand our deen. We ask you, Allah, to grant us wisdom and to grant us knowledge and to bless us with growth in every passing day, in every passing experience of our lives, until we meet you and you're pleased with us. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ameen, ameen, wa akhir da'wan, alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Amma ba'd, jazakumullah khair for coming tonight for the Friday Forum, as we're going to be discussing a subject that hopefully piques your interest and hopefully can play a critical role in clarifying a lot of doubts, misconceptions, and confusion about our deen, how to approach Islamic knowledge. There's a lot of different angles to this, and this is not really meant to be a formal class. It's not meant to be an academic presentation or anything like that, but we're going to be touching upon different things that often confuse people. What is fard ayn? What is fard kifaya? What should I learn about Islam first? How can I go about doing that? What is fiqh? What is fatwa? Why do scholars differ? What are madhahib? Must I follow a madhab? Some of the inner workings of this, inshallah. And hopefully this topic will be given life by your questions, as we usually have it. I usually have someone with me, and since there was no one with me today, and our brother Ibrahim, who's usually with me, is traveling, I decided, let me just put normal table, chair, and I'll engage you guys directly bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And so hopefully this could be given life by things that you don't quite understand about Islamic knowledge. What I'm hoping you'll walk away with from this conversation is, one, an appreciation of the depth of Islamic knowledge in terms of our historical tradition, our past, and also a realization of the different things that Islamic knowledge covers. So these are the two hopes I have: appreciation, realization. Appreciation, realization. We're not going to go in depth introducing different sciences because we have such a short time with us. But there is a growth curve that's needed in understanding. And if I have this growth curve, by the way, the hope is that I'll be able to begin to prioritize things in my deen. What does it mean to prioritize things in my deen? Realizing that this subject should cover, for example, this vast amount of my timeshare and of my concern, whereas another subject maybe perhaps should take this amount of my timeshare. You'll often find that knowledge grants the person the ability to have a discerning eye. What does a discerning eye mean? That means when I look at this, anything, you could choose to look at it very plainly, or you could choose to look at the depths of it. If I look at even this border that's right in front of me, I could choose to say, oh, it's a brown border, right? Or I could choose to look what's deeper than that. Look at the threads and how they're going, and the metal casing around it, and the screws and where they're placed, and the wheels and all the rest. That's, in that same sense, this is what we call nuance, depth. This is the essence of what hikmah is. The essence of hikmah is for you to be able to see what's beyond the surface level. And I'm going to realize that, oh, I should address this issue instead of just saying a quick yes or no, a quick halal and haram, or halal or haram. I should realize that there's one angle to look at this issue, and another, and a third, and each of these angles has a different answer that's exclusive to it. We're going to talk about all this, inshallah, as we discuss. But before I get any further into this discussion, I did want to start off by emphasizing what we mentioned in the khutbah, because we have something important, significant for us as a community coming up on Tuesday in the city council meeting. How many of you guys listened to the khutbah today? How many of you guys? Raise your hand if you listened to the khutbah. Yani, less than 50% maybe. Less than 50% of you listened to the khutbah. In the khutbah today, we spoke about the subject of anti-Semitism. There is supposed to be a vote by the city council, a resolution. It's not like a law to make something criminalized, but it's a vote by our city council in Clifton about the issue, the definition of anti-Semitism. There's this definition that's been accepted by many different entities in this country. It's by a lot of efforts from Zionist supporters that conflates being against Israel as being against Judaism and Jews. And of course, this is very far from the truth. We as Muslims, as we mentioned in the khutbah, have no issue with Judaism as a religion or Jewish people as an ethnicity. And we say that everyone in this dunya has their freedom to choose for themselves what they want. But when you try to take advantage of religion for political gain, this is where we have a problem. And this is what the proponents of Zionism are trying to do with this definition, because they make it any effort to condemn Israel means an effort to marginalize Jews as followers of a faith in an ethnic group. And of course, that's not the case. So for us, this is a critical thing. We need to be there on Tuesday at 8 p.m. in the city councils, just down the street, so that we show our voice in this matter. Because if they pass it, then basically it sets a negative precedent. We're basically redefining things. You know how Islamophobia redefined a lot of things for Islam? How did it redefine things? You know, it made jihad a concept in our religion. You know, take the image of, you know, a vicious, murderous criminal with a beard and a turban wanting to terrorize people. And it scared people away from Islam and jihad. Definitions are really, really important. And they realize this, and that's why they're trying so hard from city to city, state to state, to push this agenda for many years. Definitions are critical. So please, if you look, how many of you are on the WhatsApp group that we have? Raise your hand if you're on the WhatsApp group. All right. Many of you are not on the WhatsApp group for the Friday Forum. For the Friday Forum. You're not on the WhatsApp group for the Friday Forum? You need to be on the WhatsApp group for the Friday Forum. Inshallah, maybe we can have, Ahmed, are you around? Oh, there you are. If you could get the QR code for the Friday Forum group or something like that, that would be great, inshallah. Please join the group for the Friday Forum, because we always send out stuff there that's pertaining to this gathering. You'll even hear about the subject ahead of time. So you could get direct messaging about that. But he shared in the group the link to the Google form. Sign the petition, especially if you live in Clifton And if you could come on Tuesday, come on Tuesday. Insha'Allah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. All right. So, as we usually do, you see the Slido here. I'm hoping that you guys would engage with whatever confuses you about Islamic knowledge, Islamic law, Sharia, all the rest. Put whatever you want there. And inshallah, I'll share with you guys what I have. Look, when it comes to building an appreciation for Islamic knowledge, it stems from this. We see this relationship that we have with the Prophet ﷺ, with the Quran as our deen. When you study about Islam, you're studying deen. It's different than when you're studying any other subject. And that's why it's different than studying math, science, history, or whatever you talk, literature, anything of the sort. Why? Because me learning about Islam in itself is an act of worship. And that's the difference in this subject. Those other subjects that you study can become rewarding with a good intention, no doubt. If you have a good intention to study medicine, to do something good for society, that could be very rewarding in itself. Or anything else for that matter. But centrally, when you study about Islam, it in itself is an act of worship. That's why, long ago, they stated this. They said, إِنَّ هَذَا الْعِلْمَ دِينٌ فَانظُرُوا عَمَّنْ تَأْخُذُونَ دِينَكُمْ. This knowledge that we have in Islam, this is deen. It's religion. It's faith. Make sure you're very mindful of who you take your faith from. In fact, we see it like this because it's the inheritance of the Prophet too. I'll share with you guys something from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, or from the time of the companions, I should say, after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah saw people in the masjid, in the market, distracted. They were busy buying and selling, And he wanted to teach them a lesson. So he decided to get their attention somehow. What's the best way to get people's attention? Huh? Scream? Without screaming, because sometimes you could scream and if it's very loud, you still won't get their attention, right? What's the best way to get people's attention? Present them, something way better than questions. This, you don't even need to ask a single question for this. What do? There you go. Just do this. Show them what they love, what they really, really want. They're going to pay attention to you. Just show them the money, right? Present them something. This is we're giving away. Imagine, just like, it doesn't even require like great marketing or anything like that. Just masjid puts a nice, plain message on Facebook. No marketing, no like Facebook ads, nothing. We're just going to put on Facebook, we're giving away free iPhones at Salat al-Isha today. Period. That's it. I just want you to imagine what the masjid's going to look like if we just put a plain one-line post like this. We are giving away free iPhones at the masjid at Isha today. You will find people coming from Pennsylvania and New York to the masjid, Salat al-Isha. That's the reality of it. So what did Sayyidina Abu Hurairah do? He said, what are you guys doing here? When the mirath of the Prophet ﷺ is being distributed in the masjid, what did the people in the market do? Everyone ran to the masjid. They want to say, what is this? We didn't know the Prophet ﷺ left behind some inheritance for us. I want some. I will fight for that, right? The Prophet, they loved the Prophet ﷺ. Anyway, so when they got to the masjid, they saw circles of knowledge, people studying, people remembering Allah. And then they came back to Abu Hurairah. They were really mad. They were like, what are you doing? Why are you playing tricks on us? Why are you telling us something that's not true? You said the inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ is being distributed, and we didn't see anything but hilaq ilm and hilaq dhikr. So he said to them, the Prophet ﷺ said, إن العلماء وهم ورثة الأنبياء وإن الأنبياء لم يورثوا دينارا ولا درهما وإنما ورثوا العلم فمن أخذه أخذ بحظ وافر. He said to them, the Prophet ﷺ said that those of knowledge are heirs of the Prophet. They are inheritors. And the prophets did not leave behind dirhams or dinars, gold coins or silver coins. They didn't leave behind money. That's not what their inheritance was. They left behind something greater. They left behind knowledge. This knowledge is the source of guidance. So he said, فَمَنْ أَخَذَهُ أَخَذَ بِحَظٍ وَافِرٍ. If you take this knowledge, then you've taken a large portion from the inheritance of the Prophet. And you know, this, I just want you to feel with me what type of mindset it created within the companions and the later generations after that. They had such an appreciation for knowledge that made it something more than information, right? It made it something, you know, ilm in Islam is something sacred. Why is it sacred? Why is it sacred? Because you see this ruh, this soul, it needs to be fed with it. You see this mind that I have, this conscience, if my mind, my conscience is not fed with knowledge, it's going to have very bad advice. Why? Who's the advisor to the heart? Mind. If the mind has such an ignorant, shallow view of life, then its spiritual experience will be very shallow and limited. You know why? Guess what? Guess what the Quran says? The Quran says, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. When you learn and you nourish your soul by learning and reflecting, then you're actually elevating your iman. You're giving it greater meaning and greater purpose. You know, if you look at the Quran, just look at the Quran, look at the Quran. Throughout all of its pages, you're going to find on every single page something that triggers reflection. Allah says, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ? Don't you think? أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ? Don't you see? أَفَلَا تَسْمَعُونَ? Don't you listen? قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانظُرُوا. Travel the land and observe. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا كَيْفَ يُبْدِئُ اللَّهُ الْخَلْقَ. Don't they see how Allah began creation? And so on and so forth. Every single. أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ? Many ayat in the Quran all lead back to this reality. That's why, you know, the Salaf, they had a big appreciation for ilm. You know, why do you think, let me ask you this question. Why do you think that there is this learning gap for us in appreciating knowledge? Why do you think? Let me see. There's a lot of different answers you could give for this. I want to hear from you guys. Why do you think, when you look at the predecessors and what they did, I'll just give you one more example. Think of your answer and then raise your hand. You had companions and tabi'een, successors, the generation after the companions, who would travel far distances just to get one hadith, right? One hadith. We have this narration, it says, that one of the tabi'een, he was sitting with Sayyidina Abu Darda. He's one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. He was in Sham. فَرَجَ اللَّهُ عَنْ أَهْلِهَا. May Allah give relief to the people of Sham. And this man came to him and he said, I've come to you from Medina, the city of the Prophet ﷺ, for a hadith that I heard you narrate. And by the way, traveling from Medina to Syria back then wasn't easy. They didn't have these luxurious flights. You know the airplanes now, mashallah, yani, you're going, even in the, mashallah, the Muslim world even supersedes the West when it comes. You could get these first-class, luxurious queen or king beds, now you could sleep on an airplane and just pay like $10,000, Allahu Akbar. It's like, absolute luxury. Better than kings of the past by 100 times over, right? Anyway, they didn't have flights like that where you'd be from Medina to Sham in an hour or two. That's not what it was. You're talking about traveling weeks and putting yourself in so much danger. So, once he heard the hadith from Abu Darda, he got back up on his ride and he started back to Medina. So Abu Darda said, "You've only come for this?" He said, "Yes." "You didn't come for anything else? No business or trade or family or nothing." He said, "I just came for this." So then he said, "Abshir. فإني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من سلك طريقا يلتمس فيه علما سهل الله له به طريقا إلى الجنة." Take this with you. I've heard the Prophet ﷺ say, whoever treads a path by which he seeks knowledge, Allah will facilitate for him by way of it a path to Jannah. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. All right, now let me go back to the question. What was the question, by the way? What was the question? What was the question? Don't raise your hands all at once. What was the question? Why do you think that it's difficult for us as Muslims today to bridge the gap in appreciating knowledge like our predecessors did? Why do you think? Raise your hand. Go ahead. Today, knowledge is very accessible. You could Google it. Allahu Akbar. You could Google it. There you go. You see a lot of reels and you see Google, and we know Sheikh Google and everything Sheikh Google is capable of. The ifsad fil ard that Sheikh Google provides is top notch. No, I'm just joking. Did you guys understand what I said? Yeah. If you know Arabic, you understand what I said. All right. So anyway, you have Sheikh Google who can conflate every single issue in people's minds, right? And make them so confused, right? All you got to do is just go to, the other Sheikh YouTube, right? Someone asks you a question, right? Is music haram? Oh, I got a video. Let me share it with the whole world. I know the answer. Allahu Akbar. 30 seconds. I got the answer. I know the answer to this question. I'm very intelligent because Sheikh YouTube can give me answers right away, right? That's one reason. Accessibility. You'd think that accessibility would make you appreciate something so much more, but it actually doesn't do that. And when our Salaf, look at this. Take a look at this statement. One of the muhaddithin of the past, his name was Imam al-Sha'bi. Imam al-Sha'bi, he narrated a hadith to one of his students, and he said to him this: "We've given you this hadith, أعطيناكها بغير شيء قد كان الرجل يرحل فيما دونها إلى المدينة." We've given you this very easily, right at your fingertips. I just narrated you the hadith. You know this hadith that I narrated to you right now? I had to do so much to work for this. That's with everything in life. Everything in life is just like this. Allahu Akbar. This is one of as-sunan al-kawniyah. Human beings need to go through a growth curve and a learning curve for them to appreciate things. We know this with our children. You came here from another country. If you've come here from another country and you are poor and you are in need and you had no support and you had to tough it out and deal with a whole lot until you built yourself up and you got a business from Sharifin, now Allah gave you rizq. Now you have kids. If your kids don't experience similar things to what you experienced, guess what? If they're used to, gift this day, gift that day. Money here, money there, here, habibi. 18 years old and you get a car that's worth more than $100,000. And, here, you're 20 years old, you haven't worked a day in your life, but I'm going to get you married. All this stuff. I'm going to do all this for you. Guess what? It's going to spoil them. The Quran says this. The Quran says this, right? The Quran says, وَلَوْ بَسَطَ اللَّهُ الرِّزْقَ لِعِبَادِهِ لَبَغَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَكِنْ يُنَزِّلُ بِقَدَرٍ مَا يَشَاءُ. If Allah gave His ibad rizq, provisions in in abundance, then guess what? It's going to corrupt them. Good things can easily corrupt people, right? The internet, Allahu Akbar. Subhanalladhi yusabbihu ar-ra'du bihamdih wal malaikatu min khifatihi, right? Good things can easily corrupt people. The internet could be a great thing, but could easily corrupt people. And it does, and it will, and it has, and it continue to do so, right? What else do you think? Why else do you think? All right, that's one thing, the accessibility. What else can you say as a reason why it's difficult for us to appreciate knowledge for us as people living today? Why do you think? Why do you think? So accessibility is one. What? Your own nafs? What do you mean? But that's a universal, right? In past and present, right? Why do you think now? Yeah, so your nafs, your ego could definitely blind you and you don't see, yeah, I'll build on this. I'll build on this. One of the things that they say, knowledge, it's an interesting dynamic because the less you know, the more you think you know. The more you know, the more you realize how little you know. I'll say that one more time. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, right? The less you know, the less you know, the more you think you know. The more you know, what? The more you know how little you know. It's a tongue twister, right? I'll give it to you in another way. One of the Salaf, he said, Al-ilmu thalathatu ashbar. Knowledge is 3 milestones. Whoever reaches the first one, right? Whoever reaches the first one, what does he think? He thinks that he knows everything. Allahu Akbar. And this is not to be condescending, but this is just for the meaning to settle in within us, all of us. Because, all of us are or were like this at a certain point in our growth. We all go through this. We're human beings. It takes time for us to learn things. The person might have been just a week ago or a month ago, not even praying. And now he finds himself in a position where he thinks that he can tell people what to do. This is halal and this is haram. And this is right and this is wrong. Do this, don't do that. Right? Al-ilmu thalathatu ashbar. They say, فَمَنْ بَلَغَ أَوَّلَهُ تَكَبَّرْ. Well, the person who's in the very beginning of it thinks he knows everything. Oh, what's there to Islam? Right? There's Quran, I know that. There's hadith, yeah, I know, there's Bukhari, right? What else is there? I don't know. But the more you go into it, the more you start realizing, Allahu Akbar, things aren't as I thought they were. I need to think once, twice, and thrice before I answer something. Because there's a lot more to this than I ever imagined. They say, وَمَنْ بَلَغَ ثَانِيهِ تَوَاضَعَ. Whoever reaches the second of these milestones will be humbled. Right? And whoever reaches the third of these milestones realizes that he truly does not know. عَلِمَ أَنْ لَمْ يَعْلَمْ. Meaning that my knowledge in comparison to Allah's knowledge is so peripheral and significant. Right? This is a reality. This, what we're saying so far, all helps us get to the point to appreciating knowledge. Hey, you know what? Knowledge needs time. Knowledge needs effort. It needs focus. Knowledge is my deen. Knowledge is my deen. When I speak about, one of the sins that they say that a person could commit is to speak without knowledge. Right? It's to speak with, that's a sin for one to speak about a verse of the Quran or hadith of the Prophet ﷺ without full clarity about what it means. That's what we learn from our Prophet ﷺ. أَخْطَأَ وَإِنْ أَصَابَ. If he tries to interpret a verse in the Quran, it's scary. Sometimes the shaitan could convince us, hey, you know what, I'm capable, I'm not, I'm educated, I'm knowledgeable, right? Let me just open this translation and I'll start explaining the Quran myself, right from the translation. What do I need books of tafsir for, right? Anyway, that's only part of this discussion. But now, where can we take this? And by the way, are we getting questions? All right. I'm going to go a little further, and I'm going to just explain the different facets of knowledge, and then we'll start taking questions, inshallah. Now look, when it comes to the facets of knowledge, I learn priorities by realizing a few different things. Is fiqh like faith? Of course not. There are different levels. And again, this is why it's very, very critical. Look, the Prophet ﷺ stayed in Mecca for how many years? How many years? Shout out the answer. How many years? 13 years. You will find in this marhala Makkiyah of the Prophet ﷺ's life that it was all focused on ingraining faith within the hearts of people. It was not about matters of legislation and law. Very scarcely, very few things, minimal things. Doesn't mean that law is not important. But priorities are more important. Priorities are more important. Faith is what brings people into Islam or brings them out of Islam. That's why faith is front and center. Iman, aqa'id, being very clear on these things. I need to know why I believe in Allah, and what are the proofs of Allah's existence. How do I understand Allah? How can I connect with Allah? Through His words, through His actions, through His names and attributes. And then what do I need to know about the prophets? What do I need to know about the Day of Judgment? What do I need to know about matters of faith? These are the foundations of the religion. You'll find more agreement on this than you find on fiqh. Then there's another layer on top of this. This other layer is what makes Islamic law dynamic. It makes it suitable for all times and places. It makes it this source of continuous flow of information. Let me ask you this. All right, so when it comes to fiqh, what does fiqh focus on? If someone asks you this question, how would you answer it? What does fiqh focus on? Go ahead. Umar. Those are a lot of words. I'm just going to take one of them. Activity, right? What does fiqh focus on? Action. Fiqh equals action. Faith and iman equals beliefs. That's simply put. Fiqh is the assessment of every action you could possibly do in this existence. That's what fiqh is. It's al-ahkam al-amaliyya. Al-ahkam al-amaliyya. That's what fiqh is. Let me ask you another question. When it comes to what you do or what you can do, there are two main categories. And this is going to teach me a lot about how I should start learning this. All right, if fiqh is important, okay, I established faith, I'm a Muslim. I'm clear on that. Now, this vast ocean of ilm, how can I start approaching it? Through these two doorways. There are things that are expected of me as an individual, and there are things that are expected from the community of believers. Does anyone know the terms for these two things in fiqh? What are these? Things that relate to me as an individual. Umar, you've answered a lot already. Let's see if someone could help you. Who can help you? Who knows? One thing relates to my individual responsibilities. Me as a person, what I need to do and what I need to know. What is that? What is that? These are things, yeah, go ahead. There you go. MashaAllah, Allah yaftah alayk. Fard ayn, it's an individual obligation. This is something that if I don't know this, then guess what? I might be committing a sin. I had a brother speak to me earlier today. MashaAllah, young guy, alhamdulillah, he's asking about this question now. He's asking about zakat. He's asking about zakah. If I'm someone who has money and I've allowed years of my life to pass without ever asking about zakah, then I'm liable on the Day of Judgment. I'm sinful for not asking about this, right? If I'm someone who has to pray, we all have to pray. Everyone who's baligh here has to pray. And I've never really taken time to make sure that my prayer is right and what I'm doing in prayer is correct. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I often have people in their late adult years asking about basics of ilm, basics of knowledge. And when they're given the answer, they, oh my goodness, I lived a lifetime and I never knew that that's what I was supposed to be doing. Now what do I do with all those years that I wasn't doing this, right? So this is why now you're hearing this information. Guess what? I need to make sure I'm taking care of my individual obligations, my fard ayn. If I'm not, there's a really big problem. Because this is something that I cannot be ignorant of. Yeah, sure, I'm not going to need to know all of the details of Islamic law. That's why you go to a sheikh for those things. I don't need to know all the details. I don't need to know the details of an inheritance law or divorce. I don't need to know the details of these. But what I do need to know is what expecting from me as an individual. Fard ayn. This is an interesting thing. Fard ayn, it doesn't stay the same with all people. It doesn't stay the same. You guys understand that? Is fard ayn the same for all people? No, it's not. It depends on What are you doing with your life? Someone who's young, doesn't have money, their fard ayn will be minimal. They're not married, they don't have money. Their fard ayn is going to be their ibadat, right? When they grow up and they want to get married, guess what's added to their fard ayn? The ahkam of zawaj and the huquq of zawaj, the rights and the rulings relating to marriage. They have children, the rights of children. Add to that the list. Then they get inheritance, or they're in a position where they need to inherit from their parents or something else. Then that's when they need to start asking about mirath. They get a business. They get money. Oh, zakah, hajj. Let me add to that. Or what's riba and the rulings of buying and selling. The fard ayn continues to build up. What's the other thing called? So this is called fard ayn, right? What's the other thing called? Someone said it over here. Fard kifaya. Community obligation. That's something basically, if the community doesn't do it, then everyone's sinful for not doing it. Like what? Like janazah prayers. That's an example. Some of them said salat al-jama'ah is fard kifaya. Some of them say it's sunnat kifaya. Some of them said it's fard kifaya. Meaning that if people in an entire city don't establish jama'ah, then this doesn't speak well for the city. This is a very bad sign, right? Now, these are the two things. Now, let me assess it further. How can I approach Islamic knowledge? Because this is not just supposed to be about fiqh. There's a big question. I'm new to this. I'm new to this. What should I study first? I'll tell you. There are two subjects that you can study that you'll never regret with starting. You'll never regret starting with these two subjects, right? Some subjects need a teacher. Some subjects need a teacher. And you know, that's one of the other things I would have added to. Why is there a lack of appreciation of knowledge? Because there's a lack of companionship with people of knowledge. When people are alone with their gadgets, isolated, that's why the mother of Imam Malik, what did she say? اذهب إلى ربيعة فتعلم من علمه قبل فتعلم من أدبه قبل علمه. She said to her son, Imam Malik, this is a great mother of our past. A great mother of our past. She said, go to Rabi'ah al-Ra'i, and study from his adab and his etiquette before you study from his knowledge. That's another reason why there's a lack of appreciation of knowledge, because there's no companionship. There's no suhbah for people of knowledge. And that's something that causes all kinds of negative effects on a person's life when they don't have a mentor or a teacher with them. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, there are certain subjects that you need to study with somebody, right? There are other subjects you could begin on your own. If you start with these two subjects, I guarantee you it's going to pay off dividends in your pursuit of Islamic knowledge. Study the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Study the seerah of the Prophet. Why do you think study the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ is so important? I'll tell you why. It gives us a mature example of how we should be as believers. That's why it's so important. Because, there's a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a messenger with the message. We as human beings need to see a messenger. We need to see a model. We need to see how it's lived. I need to see it in front of my eyes for me to know how to practice. When you, get this. Very often we have people when they become quote unquote religious, right? They become very zealous, right? People in their early stages of religiosity become very zealous. And then with time, it sort of balances out. This is something that we see. Very, very common trend. What does it look like? Go into it full force, and then I realize, all right, I need to calm down. What makes people more mature in their iman when they look at the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They'll realize, oh, this is how I live iman. I won't be putting down others. I won't be profane, obscene. I won't be someone who is divisive, dismissive. I won't be someone who's very polarizing. No, Iman brings people together. It doesn't drive people apart. This is what I learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is one subject. Study it. Study it. Buy books about the seerah. Listen to YouTube lectures about it. Whatever you can, invest your time and soul in connecting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is one. The other thing The other thing that you could invest your time in is, again, studying about spirituality. Studying about spirituality. This is the second subject. This is ilm, another very noble science, the science of the heart. Right? And of course, with spirituality comes aqeedah and studying matters of faith. They're very closely associated with each other. But this is how I could begin to really build myself up on this path of knowledge. It's so vast. Trust me. You know what many people do in their pursuit of knowledge? They get so caught up. I'm going to read just random fatwas online. I'm going to read random fatwas online. That's going to be my source of, that's going to be my Islamic thing, right? Just going to go to the, I'm not going to mention the websites so no one gets offended. I'm going to go to this website or that website. I'm just going to say, oh, Sheikh Fulan says this. Oh, and then this is Mash'arif, Sheikh Fulan says that. And this and that. No, that's not a healthy relationship with knowledge. You know, even just listening to YouTube lectures alone, that's not enough. That's not enough for me to have that type of relationship with ilm. I need to sit down. I need to actually put my thought into this. I need to put my heart into it. The more I give to it, the more I'll get out of it, right? So don't take that approach that's very random and haphazard. I'm going to just randomly click on videos on YouTube. Okay, this is a cool subject. Let me, hear what's the hukum of this or the ruling on that. Or let me listen to a random talk about this subject or random talk about that subject. Let me listen to motivational speeches or heart softeners. And all that stuff is good in your leisure time. But if you really want to learn about Islam, do it systematically. Read about this subject, listen about this subject and about that subject. These two subjects, I tell you, start with these two. You won't regret it. When it comes for me to unpacking things about Islamic knowledge, all right, we spoke about aqeedah and fiqh, right? There's something else called fiqh and fatwa. Fiqh and fatwa. And after this, we're going to go right into the questions, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of the time on, inshaAllah ta'ala. Fiqh and fatwa. What's the difference between the two? What is the difference between fiqh and fatwa? Fiqh is something very theoretical. It is me looking at the evidences, the hadith, the verse, kada, and understanding the hukum and the ruling that these verses and these hadith state. That's what fiqh is. Something else called fatwa. Fatwa is a very important part of Islamic law. Fatwa is a study of circumstance. What does that mean? Are all situations the same? Of course not. Anyone who understands the Quran knows that the Quran sets this precedent. The Quran came down one shot. A book fell from the sky. Is that how it worked? No. Quran came down addressing real life circumstance. And we see how, the situation changes the rulings big time. What's an example of this? I'll give you an example. I share this example a lot from Surah Al-Hujurat. Surah Al-Hujurat. Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Umar, radiallahu anhuma, in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ, raising their voices, right? Because this weft, called Weft Banu Tamim, they accepted Islam and they wanted the Prophet ﷺ to send back a teacher with them. Abu Bakr suggested a name to be sent back as their leader. Umar said no. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu got annoyed with Sayyidina Umar. He said, you're just trying to differ with me. مَا أَرَدْتَ إِلَّا خِلَافِي. And then they began fighting, raising their voices. You know what Allah says? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't raise your voice in the presence of the Prophet. And don't speak loudly to him, because if you do that, it's going to lead to your deeds becoming invalid. It's going to ruin you. After this, Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma would only whisper to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how seriously they took it. And that's how the Quran spoke to the likes of Abu Bakr and Umar, who were what? The top notch. Look at what Allah says after that about these Bedouin A'rab. These Bedouin A'rab who came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the time of Dhahira, Waqt al-Dhahira. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taking a qaylula. He was in his home. And these Arabs, they came to the Prophet and they shouted from behind the door. They said, Ya Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ukhruj ilayna, fa inna madhana lazayn, وَذَمَّنَا لَشَيْءٍ. They said to him, "O Muhammad, come out to us. Because if we praise you, our praise is well heard. Everyone will hear about it. But if we blame you, our blame is going to, if we criticize you, in other words, if we criticize you, our criticism is going to hurt you badly." What on earth? A'udhu billah. Who on earth are these jahala, these ignorant people who are coming speaking to the Prophet ﷺ like this? As he was in his home sleeping? Why couldn't they just have manners and say, "Can you please come out and talk with us?" Allahu Akbar. It sounds a lot easier, right? Sounds a lot easier to do that, right? "Can you please come out and talk with us?" Versus, "If you don't come out, we're going to do this and we're going to..." People are not all the same. People are very interesting. Human beings are very, very, very interesting creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You'll find the person who's very rough and tough and the person who's very soft. And you'll find a lot of variations in between. Anyway, the Quran, what does it say to these people? The Quran says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُنَادُونَكَ مِنْ وَرَاءِ الْحُجُرَاتِ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Those who call you out from behind the rooms of your dwelling aren't people of knowledge and intelligence. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ صَبَرُوا حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allahu Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to them, if they were only patient until you came out, it would have been better for them. And Allah is forgiving and merciful. Look at how lenient this is compared to the first one. You see, because knowledge brings with it a lot of responsibility and a lot of accountability. And you see, not all situations are the same. That's where we got into this. Not all situations are the same, right? Fatwa is varying from person to person. I'll give you another example. There was a person who came to one of our salaf, and he said to him, I think it was Al-Hasan al-Basri, he said, هل للقاتل, or either him or Ibn Abbas, I can't remember to be honest. هل للقاتل توبة? Does someone who commit murder have the opportunity to repent? So he said, no. He said, no, you can't repent. And he left. And then his students asked him, how on earth could you say no when you taught us that yes, someone who kills another can repent? He said, I saw the rage and anger in his face, and I knew he had not yet committed the act. And if I had told him, yes, then what? He would have went and committed murder. So this is part of the fiqh of fatwa, the understanding that's needed for fatwa. Fatwa, that's why they say al-fatwa la tu'ammam. You know, many people that go to a sheikh and they'll get an answer for their specific situation. And they'll tell everyone around them, oh, the sheikh told me this, the sheikh told me that. And this person doesn't know that you can't. Fatwa is specific to you because it depends on your situation. If you change one thing in this equation, then the whole answer could possibly change. This is the reality of fatwa. Fatwa is something that's very dynamic. It addresses time, place, and situation. That's the last thing so let's just review what we did. We went over an appreciation of knowledge, historical. We mentioned the inheritance of the Prophet ﷺ. Well, we mentioned why it's difficult today to appreciate knowledge because of the accessibility, because of the lack of companionship, right? And because of the minimal effort that's needed to get to knowledge. And then we also addressed how knowledge needs this growth curve. Right? In the beginning of knowledge, I'll think I know everything. But the more I learn, the more I know I don't know very much. I need to take my time. We said that speaking without knowledge is a source of great sin. We also spoke about fard ayn and fard kifaya, fiqh and fatwa. We spoke about how should I begin to access knowledge. And there's just so more you could add to this. But hopefully now we'll get, with the remaining half hour that we have, questions that will give this discussion light. Let's go over them. Bismillah. Here we have this question. Look, a lot of Islamic institutes require students to be full-time. What can we do to get a good, higher level Islamic education while being busy with kids, family, work, or college? Very good question. Now look, what are you trying, a good question to answer, to figure out how to deal with this is, what are you trying to get out of this pursuit of knowledge? If it's, so basically, what am I trying to do with it? Am I trying to become a teacher, a certified teacher, مثلا? Or am I trying to become an imam? Or am I trying to become a scholar? Or am I just doing it as something on the side for my own personal growth? There's a difference between the two. If I'm doing this on the side for my own personal growth, then pursuing a degree could be useful in organizing my pursuit of knowledge. It could be useful in organizing it, but it's not absolutely necessary. Meaning that there are other avenues. You don't need to necessarily invest in getting a bachelor's in Islamic studies. You don't need to be part of a full-time program. You could even take classes online, and there's tons. If you want, there's tons of classes online that are not full-time programs. One source of knowledge that you could pursue that's free is you could go to Seekers Hub online. They have a lot of online classes for people in English. Seekers Hub, that's one. And there's also many other institutes. There's institutes, that are local. For example, this is one I teach with. I teach with Safina Society, Dr. Shadi, and that's something that you do on your own time, right? You gain access to their online portal, and you could listen to dozens of different talks online at your own pace. There's recorded lectures. Some of them are live lectures, and that's another avenue you could pursue. Or you could pursue something else. I also teach with Institute. It's local. But this is this is for someone who wants something more formal. If you want something more formal and something more rigorous, you could go to local institute, Manara Institute, institute I teach for, that's local here, and they have classes in Arabic and in English, right? There's many in other states as well. Some of them are full-time, like you said, but there's also other ones that are online. There's another institute that I teach for that's based out of Texas. It's called the Guidance College. It's headed by Dr. Ma'an. And that's something for formal education. But basically, this is the advice I would give for someone who's doing it by themselves. You don't need to necessarily enroll in a program. You could enroll in courses and cover them at your own pace. That's something else that you could do. And also, the way I answer this question is going to vary based on what you're trying to get. If someone wants to become an actual talib ilm, a student of knowledge, and really make it a long-term investment, then I would tell you to study something else besides the two subjects I told you right now. And this is what we do, So, the two subjects I said to study, what were they again? Seerah and spirituality and tawheed and aqidah, right? This is for someone who wants the low-hanging fruit. I just want something to, help me connect with my Islam. Someone wants to be an actual student of knowledge. The two subjects they should study are what? Lugha Arabiya and Quran. Arabic language and Quran. Because the offering in Arabic language, the accessibility to knowledge, Lugha Arabiya is min ulum al-ala. When you come to talk about Islamic knowledge, we have something that we have, ulum al-maqasid. I'm not talking about maqasid al-sharia, but these are sciences that are sought in themselves. What are the sciences that are sought in themselves? You're talking about fiqh, hadith, tafsir, aqidah. These are the knowledges that are sought in themselves. Then there are ulum ala. These are the tool sciences that help you access these. Like what? Nahu, sarf, balagha. You might not know what these words mean, but these are basically sciences of Arabic language. Then you have something called usul al-fiqh. These are the principles of fiqh, right? Then you have something else called mantiq, logic. And there's other tool sciences that you can study. But if someone wants to become an actual student of knowledge, I'll tell them, hey, you know what? The more you invest in studying Arabic language, guess what? It is going to give you a new world of access. There's no comparison in studying the Quran in Arabic than studying it in English. It's a completely different world. Yeah, sure, you could gain a lot in English that'll help you. Of course, this is not to dishearten anybody. Again, it's what you're seeking. If someone wants to get closer to Allah, there is plenty available in English to help you get closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, and to learn a good understanding of Islam. Whether you're talking about tafsir or hadith or fiqh or aqeedah or whatever it is, plenty in English. But if you want to be a teacher for others, and if you really want to delve deep and understand the tradition, then if you connect with the Quran, this is what they used to do for students of knowledge when they were young kids. That's what they did. Memorize the Quran, right? Memorize the Quran and learn Arabic language. So that's how the difference. So based on what you're looking for, the answer is going to be a little bit different, right? And there's not to say that this path is no good or that path is no good. No, each person has what they need in their personal life based on their situations. All right, here's another question. What most important knowledge should a wife, a mother have? What knowledge should a father have? A very good question, very noble question. Look, my advice for this, they say that, فَاقِدُ الشَّيْءِ لَا يُعْطِيهِ. Someone who is absent of something cannot give it, right? The first step to good parenting is for me to build myself, is for me to strengthen my understandings of things. That's the first step. It's not the last step, it's the first step. I need to build up my knowledge base. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, instead of pursuing knowledge for fulfilling your role as a mother or as a father or as a wife or a husband, pursue knowledge for the sake of knowledge, and you're going to find that that's going to pay off in your parenting and in your relationship as well, at a secondary level. But in general, if you learn it for knowledge for itself, then you'll find that communicating it to your child will be much more within your grasp. Wallahu a'lam. Of course, what the children need is very well known. What the children need, they need simplified versions of faith and spirituality, stories of the past, connect them with the tradition, the life of the Prophet, the stories of the companions, so on and so forth. All right. A few questions on trying to learn seerah. What are some online resources and what book recommendations to learn more about the seerah? All right. How would I answer this? So there's a lot. Again, I'm answering this for an English audience. When it comes to the books, for seerah, there's a book called When the Moon Split. There's another book called Revelation by Mi'raj Muhyiddin. These are two very, very good books in English for seerah. And there's also other books besides this. There's, I don't know what it's called in English. It's called Seerah Durus wa Ibar, lessons from the seerah or something like that. The author's name is Sheikh Mustafa As-Sibai. This is also very good. And there's other good books besides this. If you want a good practice, could be if you find something and you're not sure if it's a good book or not, ask about it. And I could give you the answer, inshallah. In terms of series and lectures, it depends on what approaches to the seerah that you're looking for. There is a comprehensive, detailed approach. And that's not for everybody. It's for some people. Some people who are detail-oriented and want the full breadth of the seerah. Obviously you know that Dr. Yasir Qadhi has this very lengthy series on the seerah that you could listen to, and now that you could read. Actually, the book is published, and that's something that you can access. If you want shorter versions or tailored approaches, because sometimes people take a mawdu'i approach, a subject-based approach to seerah. Maybe they'll talk about based on subject. They'll talk about the battles of the Prophet ﷺ. Then they'll talk about the Prophet ﷺ and his home. Then they'll talk about the Muhajireen, stories from the Muhajireen, or stories from the Ansar. They'll talk about the latter years of the Prophet ﷺ. It'll be subject based. Al-Muhim. So that's what I would say. There's other YouTube series out there. I'm not a database of information when it comes to this. So you could find more. And if you find something and you're not sure, learn to ask. This is one of the critical things that comes with companionship in this pursuit, with companionship of a person of knowledge, is that you could always ask, right? So try to find that companionship with whoever it is. Any person that you trust their knowledge, build a relationship. Learn how to ask. All right, I found this lecture. Is this someone good to listen to? Right? Now some people, they're very confident in themselves. I don't need to ask. Our scholars say something about this. Our scholars, they say that the only two things that stop a person from asking are either kibr or haya. Kibr, arrogance, or pride. Arrogance or pride. I need to humble myself if I'm going to learn. If I think I know everything, then guess what? I'm not going to learn very much. And that's why, look, there's a beautiful line of poetry from Imam Shafi'i. Look at what he says. He says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَذُقْ ذُلَّ التَّعَلُّمِ سَاعَةً ذَاقَ مَرَارَةَ الْجَهْلِ طُولَ زَمَانِهِ. He says, look, if someone doesn't taste the dhul, or dhul is like humiliation. It's not humiliation, but it's like it's humility. It's like it's going to break you down because you're going to be in a position that's very vulnerable. I need to expose myself that I don't know because I'm going to start asking questions, right? I need to be willing to be vulnerable and ask questions and learn. Whoever doesn't taste that for an hour of his life, not literal hour, but a short time of his life, if I don't really dedicate a short amount of the time in my dunya to learning, then guess what? I am going to taste the bitterness of ignorance for the rest of my days. Wallahi, it's bitterness. Wallahi, it causes a sense of bitterness in many different ways. Nasallahu salama wa afiyah. So here's another question. Can depression be a way of shaitan making it difficult to learn spirituality, grow spiritually? How to deal with depression affecting spirituality and pursuit of knowledge? Look, the subject of depression is something that afflicts many people in society today. It's a real thing. It's something that causes people to lose their life sometimes. It's very serious. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help anyone going through depressing life circumstances. Allahumma ameen. May Allah give them faraj, give them ease, help them find sources of happiness and sources of fulfillment. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them from anything that would bring them down or deter them away from goodness. Allahumma ameen. Look, how to deal with depression affecting spirituality and pursuit of knowledge? Look, that needs a discussion. It depends on what's causing this depression. Is it day-to-day circumstance? Is it regretful decisions that you have in your life? Is it sinfulness? Is it family? Is it something medical? Is it something that is out of your hands? That's not really because of anything that's going on in your life. It really depends. All of this is going to change the answer. So I can't really give you a full answer to this without understanding what are the triggers that are leading to this depression for you personally. In fact, I don't think that depression should deter from spirituality. In fact, no. Spirituality is one of the greatest forces against depression. It strengthens you and it helps you endure a whole lot of difficult things in life. So, if I was you, my advice, whoever asked this question, if I was you, sit down and talk with somebody and figure out why it is that you're depressed, and that'll give you better perspective on how to emerge from it and actually build yourself in terms of your knowledge and your spirituality. One thing, I got one note that the questions that are highly voted aren't being shared. If you could share some of those highly voted questions. I'm not reading through Slido, by the way. The questions are being sent to me by an individual in the crowd. I won't put him on the spot. Anyway, can you speak about madhabs? I hear a lot about Hanafis, etc. My Bengali and Pakistani friends pray differently from me. Yes, look, madhabs, this is a very big subject. Madhabs. Why do scholars differ? You know, you need to take a course on this. Why do scholars differ? It's not just about there being a hadith or khalas, right? Sometimes it's the understanding of the hadith, the fiqh of the hadith, that leads to this difference of opinion. Sometimes there's multiple different evidences, and some are giving priority to this evidence over that evidence. There's many different reasons why, there's a whole science altogether in it. Madhabs are approaches to Islamic law, how to understand the texts of the Quran and Sunnah. These are through these different approaches. And these madhahib, again, they're dealing with, so here's the thing about fiqh. Fiqh is not something clear-cut, meaning that there is meant to be a room for difference of opinion. There's meant to be. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, He could have set everything in stone. But He didn't. He left so much room for there to be interpretation of things. You know why? Now we're not talking about something that's so obvious like shurb al-khamr, like drinking alcohol. Drinking alcohol, anyone who's mainstream Islam is going to tell you alcohol is haram. There's ijma' on this. It's a matter of consensus. You can't consume alcohol. But when it comes to the finer, more detailed things, you'll find differing approaches. And these differing approaches give us a variety. You know, many people rush to raise the bid'ah card, right? The bid'ah card. You guys heard of the bid'ah card? Bid'ah card, right? Be careful with this word bid'ah. Don't use it loosely, right? Because there are a lot of differences between the scholars, and the scholars have always embraced these differences. Look at Imam Malik. Imam Malik, he wrote this very big book, very great book in our Islamic tradition. It's called Al-Muwatta, Muwatta Imam Malik. And during his time, the Khalifa loved this book so much, he said, I want to make copies of this book and distribute it to all of the provinces of Islam, so that people will be compelled to follow it. They won't listen to anything, they'll follow Muwatta. So then Imam Malik said to him, don't do this, O Khalifa. Because the scholars continue to differ from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And they will continue to differ. So do not alter or change something that the deen has made as part of design. Now I'll give you an example. Something even from the time of the companions. We had among the companions who were literal in their interpretations. And we had other companions who looked beyond to the meanings and the reason. An example of this school, these two schools, Sayyidina Umar we know Sayyidina Umar because of the fiqh of Sayyidina Umar. Sayyidina Umar is known for his fiqh. And he would be one who would look for reason. Same thing with Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Abdullah ibn Abbas was someone who was devotedly committed to the wording of the law. Same thing with Abdullah ibn Umar, these two. So you find that, there's a verse in the Quran that says, one of the reasons that requires wudu is أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاء, or if you were to come into physical contact with the opposite gender. Is that what it means? This is one interpretation. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, what did he say? Just come into skin contact, what? You're going to have to renew your wudu. But then you found Sayyidina Ibn Mas'ud said, oh no, this is kinaya, this is metaphorical. This is referring to something else. It's not referring to literally coming into skin contact. This is talking about having intimacy with your spouse. That's what breaks your wudu, not just touching the skin. That's not going to break your wudu. But is one wrong and one right? No, these are acceptable interpretations. So anyway, getting back to the question, if you really want to understand what madhahib are, this needs a course. But yeah, your friends, they're praying differently than you because there's differences in fiqh. They're not wrong. What's the difference between a shaykh and an imam? These things are very subjective, right? These things are very subjective. Some people So these terms are very subjective. Some people are very loose with the term sheikh, and some people are very strict with it. Some people, they refuse to give the word sheikh except for the most knowledgeable people of the time. Everyone else is a student of knowledge, talib ilm, you know. Again, is one right or one wrong? These are subjective things, you know. These are going to be relative. When we say sheikh, yani, do we mean sheikh like Imam Shafi'i? No, of course not. You know, so then what's the difference between sheikh? Sheikh is referring to a person of knowledge. Imam is generally referring to a leader of people. And imam is a term that's used for the imam of salawat or imam of masjid or something like that. And sheikh is used to refer to a person of knowledge, right? So they relate to each other. Wallahu alam. How do we know truth from falsehood in the age of technology with so many people on YouTube? You know how? Build a relationship with a person of knowledge. A mentor, a teacher, someone you trust, someone who's more learned than you, that you can trust. That's how you learn. By yourself, you're going to continue to be confused for the rest of your days. Especially this one YouTuber who calls out prominent scholars. Leave him on YouTube. I often have OCD. No, I'm serious. Some people, it's just whatever. Their whole dunya is, some people, their relationship with deen is absolute marad. It's an illness. Tabdi', takfir, putting down this person, criticizing that person. It's an absolute disease. Some people, and there's a statement that they teach from long ago. Khalif tu'raf. If you see a Facebook personality or a YouTube personality who his entire credibility and his entire following is coming because he criticizes people a lot, know that this is someone you don't want to follow. لِأَنَّهُ بَعِيدٌ عَنْ نَهْجِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. Very, very, very far from the way of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. You don't want this type of person. Leave him on Facebook. Let him live with his inflated ego. نسأل الله السلامة والعافية. I often have OCD, doubts with wudu or other ibadah, and it causes frustration. I don't want it to impact my iman. What can I do? Look, the best thing I tell with people with who have this issue, al-waswas al-qahri, they have very intrusive thoughts, and it's like OCD almost, so to say. For this person, don't pay attention to it. However you make wudu, however you do your salah, don't even think twice. Allah will accept it from you. Because most of the time it's just purely from the nafs or from the shaitan. You've been praying for 20, 30, 40 years of your life, and you're seriously going to forget that you washed your arms? I forgot, I washed my face. Some people are like that. I know, because it could be very, very, very tough on the person. Sometimes it could get so bad that the person might stay in the bathroom for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just trying to figure out how to make wudu. Allahu Akbar. And the bathroom could be left flooded with water because this person is trying to make wudu. Please don't do this to yourself. If this is you, you're doing it wrong. Don't think like this. Just do it however it's going to happen. Put water like this on your arms like that. Kada. Just do it, and inshallah Allah will accept from you. The best way to balance this waswas is to go to the other extreme, and it'll balance it out. Don't pay attention to it. Right? Wallahu alam. This is another question here. Allah is all-knowing, so does that mean that Allah already knows which people are going to heaven or hell? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala وَسِعَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge is all-inclusive. But He doesn't compel with the results. Right? He doesn't compel with the results. Now, you can liken this in our dunya. In our dunya, say, of course, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثِلُ الْأَعْلَى. But we're talking about human beings now. Very often, a good teacher who's been teaching for a long time could tell who's going to pass and who's going to fail. After experiencing them for a short period of time, you start seeing behaviors, certain things. Maybe sometimes a person might surprise you, but more often than not, if you're very well aware of your profession, you're going to be able to tell things for what they are way before they actually happen. If this is about human beings who need experience, كيف بالله عز وجل, how about Allah, who does not need to experience things to learn? We need to experience things to learn, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not. but he does not compel with the results, right? So here, let's go through a few more questions and then we'll stand for salah. Is it mandatory to attend the Jumu'ah khutbah? And if so, why? Yes, it's mandatory to attend Jumu'ah salah if you meet the conditions for wujub. It's not mandatory upon women, and it's not mandatory upon children, and it's not mandatory upon travelers, even though all of these individuals are welcome to attend. And there are also other people who are excused from attending, like people who are chronically ill and cannot stay sitting during Jumu'ah. They're excused from Jumu'ah if it's going to raise for them some difficulty. So attending Jumu'ah, if you meet the criteria, is mandatory. Attending the khutbah is Jumu'ah is mandatory. And the reason why it's mandatory is because Allah said so. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا والأمر للوجوب. There's a command from Allah. When it's adhan time for Jumu'ah, you must hasten to salah. This is what you have to stop everything you're doing. And of course, this is talking about people who were walking distance from the masjid. They didn't need to drive for half an hour, right? So you need to be there for the khutbah. This is the evidence from the Quran. If I'm not much of a reader, how does one approach reading the Quran? How do you approach? Well, reading the Quran is not like reading another book, right? So there's that's a big subject, how to approach reading the Quran. If it's really difficult for you to read and you can't find a spiritual connection, listen. Listen, alhamdulillah. There's, Qurra with so many different voice variations and translation and tafsir and all that. Listen if you can't read. Even though reading is something that should be part of your life. It should be part of your life when it comes to reading the Quran. There should be at least a minimal relationship with reading the Quran. All right. What is your opinion on online Islamic institutes, and do you think one can reach a high level of knowledge through online learning? So high level, this is going to be all relatively speaking. Relatively speaking, if you're trying to become someone who is a professional in the field, then obviously the most fulfilling avenues to learning you're going to find overseas, where the sources of Islamic knowledge, and there's an Islamic tradition that's been around for hundreds of years, if you want to be a master in this profession. But if you're talking about something that, can you learn a lot and grow on an individual level? Absolutely. There's tons of things out there. You could benefit a lot online, but you know what, look, the human connection will always remain unique. Even if you could attend a lot of online institutes and a lot of YouTube lectures and all that, don't deny yourself the human connection with people of knowledge. If you can find a way to that, get to it. Don't deny yourself that. Learn from people, because you're going to find that it teaches you more, because knowledge is more than just information. It's a mode of living, an attitude towards life. It is etiquette, it is adab, it is character, it is many more things in between. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give us tawfiq and understanding and knowledge and wisdom, and to make us of those who share from the inheritance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen, wa akhir da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullah khair, inshallah. We will, next week, by the way, we're going to have a special Friday forum with Ustad Zaid and myself, inshallah. So Ustad Zaid's going to be with me, and we're going to have a special subject, bidnillahi ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Allah yahfazkum ya Rabbi.